know the drill. The Long Ranger is coming up in just about a minute's time. I'm Michelle Mackey, and here's what's happening right now across North America. Hard to miss this. It's a massive Texas low that's triggering some severe weather stateside. We have tornado warnings in place, but it plays out very differently for southern Ontario, and that's where it's heading next. Hold that thought. Let's take you to Newfoundland, where we have a major winter storm that is moving in through the overnight into Thursday, already picking up on some snow and some freezing rain for the southern Maritimes. That eases over the next 24 hours, but this is just getting started. Widespread snow expected through southeastern Ontario Friday, and before that happens, we could get a burst of very light snow across southern Ontario, potentially some freezing rain Thursday night. Then this is going to be straight rain and a lot of it, potentially some thunderstorms to the extreme southwest as well. Mild air is set to dominate the forecast in the southern prairies over the next little while. You can find out more in your local forecast. You get a break from the rain in BC, but it doesn't last long. By the time we get to the end of the week, another system is going to move in, but the weekend, not all that bad. There's more. Right now, it's the Long Ranger. Well, I guess the good news here is this is a rain forecast, not a snow forecast, but the bullseye for all of that rain is southern Ontario. We have a Texas low moving in through the day Thursday. It is going to be quite heavy, especially to the southwest, because we could also be dealing with some non-severe thunderstorms for the region, 40 millimeters in the forecast. Storm Watch coverage continues here on the Weather Network. I'm Michelle Mackey. You heard Chris and Mark talking about the storm. Well, here's how Environment Canada has laid out those watches and warnings. Widespread special weather statements are in place, but we also have a couple of areas where we have those snowfall warnings. That is where we're talking about 50 centimeters of snow potentially. They also mentioned that we might not see quite as much for the Avalon, and here's why. With the track of this system, it is looking like it might pull a little bit further to the east, or rather the west, and that means we could get into some warmer air through the overnight Thursday into Friday. In other words, we could see some rain, some ice pellets, potentially some freezing rain as well. But anywhere west of the Avalon, this is straight snow and very gusty winds. And then for St. John's, by the time we get to Friday afternoon, it will transition back to snow as those temperatures fall in the wake of that system. Now, this isn't just a one snowstorm event, because by the time we get to next week, we have another system moving in, but you'll note that by the time we get to Saturday, that system pushes out, but cool air is still in place, at least for the next couple of days, right through the weekend, below seasonal air, not just for Newfoundland, but also in the Maritimes. Then we look ahead to next week. So these are the two lows phasing into one, currently bringing us our watches and warnings, but keep your eyes further to the south. We have this next area of low pressure that's going to push in likely Sunday and Monday. We're still a few days out. There's still some model discrepancy in terms of the exact track, but with that cool air that I mentioned locked in place, this does have the potential to bring more snow. And I know we don't need any more snow, because this snow is just with system number one. Okay, thanks for the update, Chrissy, and thank you for tuning into the Weather Network. BC finally getting a break in all of the wet weather. Through the overnight, things are clearing out. Temperature-wise, we're going to be around 6 degrees. That's typical of this time of year. Our overnight low should be about that. And as we look across the southern prairies, note the mild air that is still in place. But we do have a little bit of wet snow and cooler temperatures towards northern Alberta, and even Edmonton could be getting into some wet snow through the overnight, and that's associated with some of the same energy that is now tracking out of BC. But let's look to the south coast. This is where you're getting a break. You're going to see some sunshine. It's not going to be a totally clear day Thursday. Variable skies, but better than what we've been dealing with. The next low waiting in the wings for the weekend. But the weekend's not a total washout. You can find out more in your 7-day forecast and your 14-day forecast too. That's in your local forecast at the end of this segment. But 20 to 50 millimeters is widespread for the rest of the day before things clear out. But keep in mind, most of that rain has already fallen. And we've also been dealing with some pretty significant high elevation snow through the week. We have about 18 centimeters left to go through the day today for places like Whistler. Lots of fresh powder. That's some good news if you like some spring skiing. But we do have those elevated avalanche danger ratings. Temperature-wise, we are right about seasonal for Vancouver through your Thursday, and still dealing with the remnants of that low pressure system through the interior. Temperatures through the overnight in the prairies, they are fairly mild, and we do have some widespread patchy fog, but in terms of active weather, that's about it. But let's talk about active weather. Yeah, we still have snowfall warnings for northern Nova Scotia, blowing snow advisories for eastern PEI. Then we go to Newfoundland. This is where the storm is going to intensify. The snowfall amounts are significantly higher, not just 5 to 10 centimeters, but 20 to 40 centimeters for places like St. John's, even higher amounts a little bit further to the west. And that's because the Avalon We are expecting a brief period of some mixing, some rain, some ice pellets through the overnight Thursday into Friday before that transition back to snow Friday afternoon, and it doesn't end there. Another storm likely to impact Newfoundland for the start of next week. Storm watch coverage continues, not just dealing with active weather for Atlantic Canada, but we also have a pretty major low that's going to be moving into southern Ontario over the next 24 hours. It's a Texas low that's developed, triggering some severe weather stateside. Next up, the Great Lakes Basin, but we begin in Newfoundland, where we have widespread special weather statements in place, including for St. John's, where we have our storm hunters. This is because we have a little bit more of a messy mix. That's why we don't have necessarily the snowfall warnings for the Avalon. But with the track of this low, we could see a little bit of mixing, a little bit of rain. We'll break down the timing in just a moment, but the Maritimes, you are not immune from this system either. We've been dealing with a big mess for Nova Scotia. Some freezing rain through the day today. The snow not done yet, an additional 5 centimeters possible for northern Nova Scotia before that system moves out of the Maritimes for tomorrow afternoon. But look at this track. Because it's pulling just a little bit further to the west, we're getting into some warmer air for the Avalon. In other words, through the overnight, Thursday into Friday morning, potentially getting into some rain, some ice pellets, freezing rain. But then by Friday afternoon, as that low pulls offshore, we get that wraparound cool air, and that is going to transition that rain back to snow. 20 to 40 millimeters possible for, rather centimeters, millimeters, I wish, right? Centimeters possible for the Avalon. But the further west we go, the more we're expecting. And keep in mind, an additional 5 to 10 centimeters for Cape Breton. We've already seen most of the snow fall, but still some pretty messy conditions through the overnight. Now, I talked about that Texas low moving into southern Ontario. Before that happened, hey there, I'm Michelle Mackey. First things, let's look at what's happening across the country in terms of our temperatures. You really see where the mild air is located in the southern prairies, and that cool air, that is located in Atlantic Canada, and that is exactly what is setting the stage for the potential of some snow as we move in through the overnight for Newfoundland. But it's already there in the Maritimes, northern Nova Scotia under a snowfall warning, and eastern PEI under a blowing snow advisory. But let's take you to Newfoundland, because this is what's next in the line of fire. We have a widespread special weather statement, plus for the Burin Peninsula, we have a snowfall warning. That is because we could be dealing with local amounts of 40 centimeters over the next little while. Now, we'll break down what's happening in southern Ontario, also dealing with some active weather here. But first things first, let's check in with Mark Robinson from St. John's. I know you guys have had a pretty rough spring so far. Okay, let's break down what's happening in Ontario. Through the overnight, calm conditions for the most part, but you'll note extreme southwestern Ontario getting into some rain. That is a taste of what's to come as we move through the day Thursday. Widespread rain, but also we could be dealing with some freezing rain and some snow. Widespread fog through the overnight is a concern in the prairies, and I know we have been dealing with some of those fog advisories over the past 24 hours. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw those issued again. Now, up towards Edmonton, we could be getting into some wet snow. We have a low pressure system developing lee side of the Rockies, and by the time we get into Thursday, it is looking like we could transition over to rain, but to the south, it is far too mild for that. Lethbridge topping out at 15 degrees. Same thing goes for Regina and Winnipeg, 11 degrees for you, but you have the chance of seeing some showers too. Good news for BC. Finally, some sunny breaks are in the forecast. Thursday, we're looking at a daytime high of 11 in Vancouver and Victoria. That is bang on seasonal. That is exactly where we should be. Enjoy this weather while you can, though, because it doesn't last. As we move towards the weekend, another low pressure system is moving in. More rain is in the forecast. Right now, we have a look at the weather outside your door. It's your local forecast. And then stay with us. Our storm watch coverage continues. We'll be checking in with Chris St. Clair and Mark Robinson from Newfoundland. Yeah, great analysis there with Chris St. Clair. I'm Michelle Mackey. Let's break down what's happening for Newfoundland, because through the overnight, the snow begins to fill in for central and western areas already. Environment Canada has issued a widespread special weather statement, plus a few localized snowfall warnings. Now, the reason St. John's is simply under a special weather statement is because we're expecting more of a messy mix there. By the afternoon, snow pushes in. This is that deepening low pressure system moving up the Atlantic seaboard. But then as we move into the overnight hours, the potential is there to see a transition to freezing rain, ice pellets, wet snow for the Avalon before it transitions back to snow by Friday afternoon, with those cold winds wrapping around the backside of that low as it pushes off. But you'll note, central, western areas, this is straight snow, and you heard Chris St. Clair mentioning the wind. It is going to be so powerful. Whiteout conditions expected once again, and then It doesn't end there, because by the end of the weekend, another low pressure system is expected to move in. But this is a look at that system. Likely going to be snow. We're going to continue to follow this one, but here's the setup for it. It's looking like two lows are going to phase in as one. This is the low that's going to be impacting us through the day, Thursday and Friday, but we know it doesn't end there. Watch out for this guy. That's the one that's moving in for the start of next week. Snowfall amounts for Newfoundland, they are significant. Now, maybe a little bit less for parts of the Avalon, simply because we could see that freezing rain, the ice pellets as well, but 40 centimeters possible for western and central areas. This is a big one, and the Maritimes 5 to 10 centimeters possible, but it is going to ease through the day Thursday for you. Charlottetown still dealing with some snow. We get that sea enhancement wrapping around the backside of that low, but some sunny breaks into the afternoon for Halifax. Still well below seasonal though, topping out at 1. Temperatures are cool in southern Ontario. Plus, we have a pretty major system moving in for you too. We'll break down the details of that coming up next in the Long Ranger. Plus,